Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Mike Kinninmonth. We're here today to do the hearing the submissions on the Waimea Park. George, if you could please, management plan. First of all, I'd like to ask Ursula for a karakia, please.
Kia ora koutou, opening karakia, tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki waho, tuia tātou te tangata, ki te kaupapa o te hui nei, ki te kaupapa o te rangi nei, mauri ora ki a tātou katoa. As you can see, bind above, bind below, bind within, bind beyond, bind us as people to the purpose of our meeting today. Breathe life into all of us. Kia ora.
Thank you very much for that. If I could just go around the team here around the table, if you could just quickly, your name, representation, who you're doing, that sort of thing, just so everybody is aware of what's going on.
Putting us on for the rain. Kia ora koutou, lovely to see you all. Ko Ursula Patzell Takawingoa. I've been appointed by Ngāti Rāua to attend this hearing and listen to your submissions. Thank you for having me. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Kip Mailing, Richmond Ward Councillor, sat around this table for a couple of terms and have an interest in Waimea River Park.
Good afternoon, Dan Shellcrest, Mutri Waimea Councillor. Have an interest in the Waimea River Park and haven't been around as long as Kip.
Kia ora tātou katoa, Rob Smith, GM for Science and Monitoring.
Kia ora, Kirsty Scammell, EA to the Environmental Science Group and taking minutes today.
Senior Governance Advisor, Kelsey McLean.
Kia ora koutou, George Daly, Project Manager.
Kia ora, David Arsenault, I'm the Rivers Team Leader and I guess proponent of this plan. I'll see you all in more visually soon.
I'm Katie, the Governance Officer.
Okay, thank you very much. Once again, welcome everybody. This is being recorded and on Zoom as well, and Councillor Ellis is on Zoom as well. It's also being recorded and will eventually be on the Council's YouTube channel. There's microphones just over there if you're hard of hearing. If I mumble too much, you can use the headphones there. Just please, no cameras and no microphones except during the break. The toilets for people who haven't been here before, through the double doors and just over where you came in. There will be media. Is there any media present? Can't see online. Yes, on Zoom. So that's the housekeeping part of today. And the more formal part now is the apologies. Is there any apologies? I'm not aware of any. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Don't have to move that. There you go. No declarations of interest? None? Okay. So we're now into the reports, and now it's time for the council staff to present their draft management plan. George and David, is it? Or just David?
Afternoon hearings panel. So I think we were just going to have a quick scoot through the cover report for this rather than go through the entire management plan now, because that would take probably the whole hearing to go through it in some detail. But just that what the purpose of the hearing is, that we've issued the draft management plan for consultation. We've got a number of fantastic submissions in and folks who want to speak about their submissions regarding the plan today. And that's why we're here today. So the purpose is to collect any additional information, feedback that people might want to provide, give a little bit more context, talk about some potential solutions and how they could be realized in the plan, and that we capture all of that today and bring it forward in another week or two to the deliberations meeting, where the hearings panel will determine what changes, if any, should be made to the plan. In terms of what was in the cover report, that was about it. We have the schedule of submitters here who were hoping to talk. Many of them are behind us now. There's a summary of the main themes that came out of the consultation, also appended to the report, which I'm hoping you've had a chance to peruse a little bit. And yeah, I think, George, if there's anything else we need to go, we just go right into the hearings at this point. Is there anything else, I think, from you, Chair, that you'd like us to cover?
I'm not aware of any, but do we need a mover and seconder for those resolutions? So we need a seconder.
Happy to move.
Thank you.
I guess it all goes on the assumption that we all know why we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
I know.
perfect.
Protocol.
Excellent.
Okay. All in favour, aye. Against, carried. Right. Now we get into the serious part of it. First person we've got here is Victoria Reid. Sit down there. If I can just start it off here with Victoria, you get 5 minutes.
Oh, that's okay. I won't need 5 minutes.
After 4 minutes, Kelsey will give you a big.
Okay, is this in my 5 minutes that you're talking?
We haven't started yet.
Okay, ready,
Okay,
steady,
go.
go. Okay. So I don't know what the other ladies are going to say, but I can guess what they're going to say, and I'm sure I'm going to agree with what they say. So I'm only going to talk about one issue in the draft plan, and that is gender imbalance. So it seems to me that it's all about cycling. And cycling is really well supported in Tasman. I think there's about 250 kilometres of cycling trails. And cycling is not gender neutral. It's mostly a male sport. I think about 70%, and you can get all of them. I'm not going to give you lots of stats, but it's all available on the internet. And I got all of my information from Sport NZ, which is, I would think, a trusted source. But you know, anecdotally, that cycling is a male sport. And I think I really support the recreational route. But my concern is that the gist of it is that it takes a bridle path that's been there for decades and is a shared path, a shared public space that's used by horse riders, cyclists and dog walkers. And it changes it into a cycle path, which is primarily for men. So the shared public path actually becomes a male space. And I live in Lower Queen Street. There's about 40 horses that are kept in Lower Queen Street between the Speedway and the river. And there are many small equestrian communities like the one in Lower Queen Street, dotted all along the Waimea River. And they are mostly women that keep their horses there. And most of those women don't have lifestyle blocks. They live in Richmond. They're really dedicated to their horses. They look after their horses every day. It's not like cyclists. There'll be no cyclists out there today. We've all been out in the paddocks looking after our horse. It's a 365-day commitment. And the community that I'm a member of is actually delivering on the aims of the plan. We're already delivering access to the outdoors for people that live in town who perhaps don't have the resources that some of us have. And if you take the bridle path away from our communities, then you undermine those communities and we'll fail and we'll stop giving those opportunities to those women. So I don't want you to do that. I want you to reconsider this. I want you to see it from that point of view. From my point of view, as a horse rider, I'm being discriminated against. As a woman, I'm being discriminated against. And my hobby is being sacrificed for the sake of cyclists who are very well served already. So I don't think that taking away the bridle path is a good idea. And that's especially important because women's sport is in a state of crisis. The gap between male and female participation in outdoor pursuits is huge. Look at this on Sport NZ. At the age of 17, it's about 30%. And as we go into adulthood, women's participation in sport drops off. The gap gets wider. And this draft plan is actually part of the problem because you're not seeing us. You're not seeing our community. You're not recognising us. You're only focused on cycle paths. So I want you to have a fresh look at this plan. I want you to make it inclusive, not exclusive. I want you to make it progressive, not regressive. I want you to address the elephant in the room, which is lack of resources put into female sport. I'm just going to close and I'm going to say, I would like you to look at the resources that you put into male sport, cycling, cricket, rugby, football, basketball, and I want you to compare that with the resources you put into netball and horse riding. That's all I want to say.
Thank you very much for that. And also, while I was listening to you then, I just very quickly appreciate you coming in on a wet day like this. It's not easy, so do appreciate it. I gathered that. So the next one is Rosemary Lee Oldfield. Is that right?
Yes.
Once again, Christy will give you a bell of 4 minutes.
Thank you. I'm coming from a rather different perspective. I'm coming from the safety perspective because the river is one of the safer areas left for equestrians to ride in. A bit of background. In 2011, I was riding my horse in the equestrian park and we were attacked by a dog. The dog owner grabbed his dog, which was a border collie, and disappeared. And to this day, I have no idea who he was. About a fortnight later, my horse and I were again attacked by a dog. And I ended up 8 days in hospital, 4 months on walking sticks. And to this day, I still have medical attention for the injuries that I received. So Rough Island for me is not a safe place. It's become a dog walker's haven. It's become a cyclist's paradise. We can't go anywhere without coming into conflict with either dogs who are wandering free or cyclists who don't seem to understand that horses don't necessarily like two-wheeled vehicles. But when I go down to the river and I ride down there, I rarely see a dog. And if there is one, it's usually on a leash and they're up on the cycle track. When I go down the river, I rarely see cyclists, and if they are on the cycle track, away from where I am. I feel safe. I don't want to be riding my horses in places where I'm not safe. And that's what I feel you're taking away from me with this plan, is the ability to have my horse where I'm safe. I've been riding since I was 14. I'm 70 now. Okay, I'm still actively involved in equestrian activities. I teach at Pony Club. I chair the Wakefield and Districts Riding Club. I'm the South Island Vice President of New Zealand Riding Clubs and their Bridleways convener. So I'm not talking just as an individual, I'm talking as a representative of a lot of groups. And as previously mentioned, we're losing safe areas to ride. And it's not fair. As for causing damage to the stock banks, which was one of the things that was mentioned, we don't ride on the stock banks. We don't ride on the cycle tracks. So how are we being, where's the evidence that we are damaging these things? There isn't any because we aren't there. And we don't go damaging the grounds like I feel that's being implied because we don't ride on the same tracks like motorbikes do, like cyclists do. If you go down the St. James through to Hamner Springs, you'll see where the off-roaders have been by the tracks they've been. You go down there, you won't see any tracks left behind by horses, maybe the odd poo, but that's about it. And that's grass anyway, so it's not a big deal. All around New Zealand and around the world, horses are mixing with cyclists, with riders. They're called shared trails. And there's a code of practice. Horses have right of way, then come pedestrians, then come people on wheels. And they share equitably. And it's wonderful. We don't need fancy tracks. We just need a patch of grass to ride on. In fact, I don't want to ride on a prepared track. I'd much rather ride on the softer soil or the ground, the sand. We can't even call Rabbit Island a free place to ride because I've been down there. In fact, after my accident, we went down there and I was greeted by a dog. I went into tears and I abused the dog. Probably not a good idea, but I did it anyway. Just to finish, I have in here a letter from Tasman District Council and Nelson City Council supporting our call to be vulnerable road users, to be recognised in legislation as vulnerable road users. But now I'm hearing that you actually want me to be out there because you're taking away one of my safe places. And I kind of feel that this letter isn't really worth the paper it's written on. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next one I've got here is Stephanie Rathburn. Once again, 5 minutes or 4 minutes plus another bell. All yours.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing me today. I'm a property owner. I own a property at 800 Lower Queen Street. In the, 7, 8 years that we've owned that property, we've had a number of grazers graze with us with their horses. One of the benefits of coming to graze at our property is that there is a safe place to ride down the river and you don't need a horse float to do so. We have had a number of people come to graze with us over the last few years that don't own a horse float because their horse will not go on a horse float. So for them to have the ability to ride from our property down to the river and along the river and have a really safe ride is giving them that safety that they can't get in other places. It's giving them the opportunity to actually get outdoors and enjoy their horse in an environment that's not just an arena or in a paddock for them to ride in. I'm also a cyclist. And I love using the cycle trails, but I must say, as I go down Lower Queen Street on my bike, I will always turn and go on the cycle trail. I never go along the river on my bike because it's not a comfortable ride. The gravel is not comfortable for bikes to go down there. As a horse rider, I go down there a few times a week, either riding a horse or taking my children down there on their horses. I would say that I've come across the cyclist maybe one time in 8 years down there. The cyclists don't use that area of the river, in my opinion. They definitely stay on the cycle trail where horses can't go, and rightfully so. I have young children who Rosemary actually teaches at Pony Club. I don't necessarily allow them to ride on the road, even from my house down to the river, because it's not safe. Cars don't always respect horse riders on the road. It's not safe. It's an 80k road. It's not safe for my children to ride. As soon as we turn off to the river, they get on, they ride their ponies, they have the best time, they are safe. Taking away that from them means that they don't have that safe place to ride. It means that the rest of our grazers don't have that same place to ride. I'm speaking on behalf of a number of our grazers who have done submissions but couldn't be here today to speak to them. And all of their submissions say the same thing. It's a safe area for us to ride. We don't ride on the stock banks. I agree with what Rosemary said. It's actually unsafe for us to ride on the stock banks. The grass is very long. It's very overgrown down that area. We don't know what's underneath it, if it's a rabbit hole or there's rubbish. So we can't ride on those areas. We stay to the trail. One of the other things that was in the draft was about the gravel or the area that we ride on. All of the horses, it's owner safety. We're not going to ride our horses on an area that's going to damage their hooves. We're not going to do that. They all wear boots, they wear shoes, they're adequately covered to be able to ride. If we didn't think they were, we thought it was hurting them, we wouldn't ride in that area, but we do. So I think my main points really are, it is a safe place. The other option for us from where we're situated is to ride out to Best Island. That is not a safe place for horses to ride. No offence to anyone here that's a golfer, sorry in advance. Golfers don't slow down for horses. If you're riding a horse, the amount of times that the horses have come back from riding out towards Best Island and have come back in tears or have come back not riding their horse because they've been almost taken out by traffic going down there, it's not safe. It is very safe to ride down Lower Queen Street and along the river. There are no cars. It's a lovely place to ride. We don't need the horse floats, like I've said before. The gravel is fine. We don't ride on the stock banks. I really can't understand where the logic comes to take away that area for horses to ride when we're not causing any damage and it's giving us that safe place. So thank you. Thank you for hearing me.
We're a bit early. Is there any questions that anybody want to ask? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next one I've got is Justine Lester.
So I'm Justine Lester. I declare that I'm employed by Tasman District Council in your libraries, but I'm here today as a representative of the Nelson Tasman Riding Club. So firstly, I'd like to thank you for including riding in the plan for the Waimea River Park and for receiving our submission. I'm going to take the submission as read. Do you have any questions for me on our submission?
I don't think we have any questions. Take it as we have. It has been read, and this is your chance to possibly expand on your submission.
So I guess in that case, there's just some areas that we'd like to highlight from our submission. As has previously been mentioned, the council is a party to endorsing the Pass Wide and Slow Traffic Safety initiative that's worldwide for horse riders. I've noted that other submissions don't oppose horse riding, and the majority of the opposition ones focusing on vehicles were focused around the damage that vehicles would be causing to the river area. And in our submission, we provided information from other councils where they have shared pathways and an understanding of how those work, particularly in the Kapiti area, where there's compatibility with cyclists. And going forward, we think this would be a great model for the Tasman District Council to adopt, and our club is willing to assist in any information gathering, public education or other assistance that may be required to work alongside you to develop those. Within our submission, there are areas that we have supported. So in particular, the looped and circular tracks, which would mean that there was the need for fewer parking areas because people can essentially return to their floats and negotiate the tracks in a looped manner. I don't have anything else apart from the submission clearly states the areas that we are endorsing and the areas that we were opposed to, in particular the stopping us riding on the stock banks.
Thank you. I've been taking notes like everybody else. Councillor Mailing has got a question.
Justine, just in the summer, my wife and daughter used to take their horses down to the river and swim the river and cross it. That was a practice I've seen, but I don't bike along that area as much. Are people still doing that in the summer in particular?
I would need to do people that are riding along there. Yes.
I thought that. Thank you for that.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Okay, that's us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Next one I've got is Catherine McNabb.
Sorry, Chair, I think we might have skipped one. Miss Mikey Faber. Mikey Faber? Oh, she's not here. Sorry. All good.
Yeah, I believe that's us.
The jet boating New Zealand. Yep. Please step up. Done this before, have you? You got 5 minutes. Chelsea will ring the bell at 4 minutes to let you know.
Okay. We're just, is it all good to go? We're just here to representing Catherine McNabb. She's our Rivers Officer. And just here to confirm the 3 launching areas that we currently use and would like to keep open if possible. That's really all we're here for, just to make sure we've still got access to launch the boats in the river. And I think you've got her a copy of the map sent with our 3 launch spots marked. Are we likely to be keeping those access points open?
I can't comment on that today, but what I can say is we've received your submission.
Yes.
We're fully aware of you wanting to remain those 3 places open. I think there's a limited use, 1 or 2 days a year that you wanted to use them, or there was a limit of how many days a year you wanted access. I might be wrong there.
No, it's okay. More. It's legally boatable any time of the year, provided it's above a certain cubic rating. 20 cubics at Irvine's Bridge, isn't it?
Thank you for clarifying that. Is there any questions? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming in. No questions. Short and sharp. Easy.
Sweet. No, I think as long as that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next person I've got is Ellie Harvey, Nelson Motorcycle Club.
Hi.
Hello, thank you and welcome. You've got your microphone. You've got 4 minutes, and then 1 minute after that.
Okay. So tēnā koutou katoa. Our Chair and Council members, thank you for giving the Nelson Motorcycle Club an opportunity to present in regard to the Waimea Park, River Park. I'm Ellie Harvey. I'm the president of the Nelson Motorcycle Club. And beside me, I've got Brian Heafy, who is a long-standing motocross rider, administrator, event organiser for 35 plus years. Our club, established in 1908, is the oldest motorcycling club in New Zealand. It has been seeking a piece of land for years to provide a safe and controlled environment for kids to ride motorcycles. This is no longer just some club coming to you with a want. We believe this has now become a need. Why a need? You as councillors will be well aware many families in desperation for somewhere to ride are taking their kids to parks, sports grounds, reserves and forestry areas where they're riding illegally and dangerously. This poses a significant risk to their safety, our community's safety,
the beautifully manicured and maintained parks and reserves, and to the environment. By providing a designated motocross area, we can ensure these kids can ride safely and responsibly. Our vision is to create a space where families can come together, learn and enjoy motorcycling in a controlled environment. We're not just about speed and competition, we're about community, camaraderie and skill building. The proposed location near Waimea River Park is an ideal opportunity, as families will use if it's in close proximity, and most importantly, will encourage people to ride in a safe and managed space and protect the environment and the parks and reserves in other areas. Our club is committed to managing and funding the motocross area ourselves, ensuring it's self-sufficient and doesn't burden the council. Councils in other regions have recognised the value of motorcycling and provided land for clubs. We believe there's a significant need for our council to do the same. By supporting our vision, you'll be investing in the safety, well-being and development of our community's young riders and families.
Awesome. Thanks, Ellie. Thank you, guys. Chair and council members. As the Vice President of the Nelson Motorcycle Club and a coach for our young riders, obviously, like Ellie said, I've been riding for a long time myself and coaching for probably 20 years now. I coach 3 groups a week, and that ranges from our beginners, our middle groups, through to our A expert riders that travel the country and the world participating in our sport. We're not just about that though. You know, our main thing that we're always battling with is the requests that we get every single day of families and children looking for somewhere to ride, and it's very difficult for us to give them an answer. Just this, I think Tuesday or Wednesday, I was travelling out to one of my coaching programs at 3:30 and I saw a family parked at the Appleby sports ground, soccer field there, with 3 little kids riding around on bikes. Ideally, I would have loved being able to pull over and go and say, hey, you shouldn't be riding here. I've got somewhere else you can go. But unfortunately, I don't have that ability. You know, I could go and say, don't ride here, but they're just going to come back and say, well, where can we go? And I have no answer for that. We are, you know, we're constantly, like I say, getting calls from parents that are committed to seeing their kids learn the sport and grow in the sport and get better at the sport. And, you know, this is constantly growing and, you know, it's a very busy pastime. Our submission for the off-road motorcycle facility within the Waimea River Park, it offers multiple benefits, providing a multi-purpose built and safe and secure environment for these kids and adults to learn how to ride their motorcycles off-road and keep them away from these council parks. That might have to stop one. Oh, 1 minute. Okay.
39 seconds.
Okay. Our facility would also generate economic benefits to the region. You know, just this weekend gone, I was with my family competing up in Taupo at an event that on one day had 250 riders at it. The next day, just under 500 riders were competing at an event. This was within 3 minutes of the town centre. And on both days, there was also a non-competitive event that had over 1,000 riders at it. So we packed that town out for that weekend, and that happens a lot in Taupo because they have this facility, which is really exciting. And there's also stuff happening in Christchurch along the same lines. Like Ellie said, we are self-funded. We're not looking for handouts from the council. We want to provide this facility and grow it ourselves with, you know, you guys behind us as the providers of the land. Yeah, we would like to see this as a positive addition to what the council here can already offer.
Perfect timing. Well done. Thank you. Thank you, Brian and Ellie. We've got maybe a second one here too, but one anyway.
I just want to know, what size area do you need?
Great question. So at a minimum, we would kind of need around 10 hectares. We would love around 15.
That's a big area.
Well, we are. Well, what we're looking to do, obviously, you know, the area is there. We'd love to be able to provide an open area for anyone to turn up and ride, but also something a little bit more special as well. Yeah. But we know there's area there, so we'd love to fill it.
Okay. That's a bit of a shock. I've got one question. I might have missed it in your submission. How many members have you got?
Good point.
Roughly.
Okay, we've got about 350 members of our club, but that's only a very, very small part of the motorcycling community, because we don't have anything kind of to offer. That mainly caters for competitive riders, because they have to belong to a club. But there's a lot bigger community out there.
There's well over probably 2,000 people that ride motorcycles in our region.
Okay.
You know, off-road, that is.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Okay. Thank you for your time. No more questions.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. The next person, and I might mispronounce Christian name, Maaka? Faber?
Seriously, I am amazed because a lot of times they pronounce it completely wrong.
These lovely ladies over here have told me 3 times.
Well practiced. All right. Thank you for having me anyway. Due to the weather and unforeseen circumstances, I ran late. I'm here sort of speaking for myself, but I know that I'm also speaking for other people that ride horses. In my submission, I have clarified that we at the moment have 4 bridle paths that are publicly known, so you don't need a key or a permission from a private person to access that property. One of those areas is used a lot by other people as well, especially people with dogs and they're not on a lead, which can cause some issues when you walk your horse there. So that one is not really that immensely popular anymore, as you can understand. So therefore, we only got 3 left. Now, one of those 3 is the Waimea River side. I would love to keep access to that park. It is a wonderful area to walk or trot your horse. I also know at the end of Lower Queen Street, I call it Lower Queen Street, but you know, to make it a little bit easier. There's so many people there that have horses. I know of people that do not have a heavy duty vehicle and do not have a trailer and actually are almost dependent on that access and able to ride there and exercise their horse. Otherwise, they will have to either purchase a new vehicle, which, you know, we all know they're not ideal. They're not very environmentally friendly. I'm very well aware of that. But also, it's a ginormous cost for those people. If you take the car and the trailer out of the equation, it is actually a really and reasonably environmentally friendly kind of exercise. I also know that most of the people that I know are women. We like to have people in sports, and especially women, to continue going to sports. I know of a lot of women that used to have a horse or used to ride horses as a teenager, then have to stop for a while because having horses and kids is usually not a good combination. Gets really busy. So when they get to a stage that the kids are a bit more independent, they go back to it again. So it is a really, not just the riding itself, just the picking up the poo, the hay. I mean, this weekend I've got planned to pick up 20 bales, so I need to pick up 40 bales really, because I need to pick them up, put them in the trailer and then stack them again. So that is going to my gym. That's going to be my gym for the weekend. So, it is a really healthy, physically healthy sport to do. And I would hate for another trail to disappear. Personally, I don't mind sharing it with either dog walkers or cyclists, even motorbikes up to a certain degree. I would just hate to see it go away. It would be such a shame because it's such a beautiful, beautiful, quiet ride to do. So yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Sounds though you're less than 5 minutes or 4 minutes. Is there any questions?
Oh, awesome.
I
Thank you
haven't
very
got
much.
any either, so thank you very much for coming.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Next one I've got here is Stephen Sutton. Once again, after 4 minutes, there'll be a bell.
Good afternoon. I do have some photos. Oh, yep. Very good. Well, we'll do that. You can leave that photo there if you like, but we'll do the photos in a minute. So I have two main points. So I'm Stephen Sutton. I'm a resident that bounds the river. We own a commercial orchard and berry farm. And we also lease some land on the river burn. And we have also in the past leased, so this is at the end of Bartlett's Road. We've also leased land on the other side, Chillies Island originally, and what we used to call the Island Acre all the way up to Aduria Road. So I have two main points I really want to make today. One is to do with the retiring of the pastoral leases to natural habitat, and the other one is commercial activities. So Tasman and Asphalt in their submission, there's a few things in their submission I don't agree, but the one statement I do agree with, which it states, it's important to remember that the park's primary function is flood protection. And I think that that is the key. While the park is a great concept, and there's lots of people that use it, I live there, lots of people use motorbikes, lots of people go horse riding, occasionally you hear a jet boat, lots of people walk, lots of people take their dogs out. It's a great spot. But just remember, flood protection is the main activity that the park should be looking into. The river berms were acquired by the catchment board from landowners for flood protection. They weren't acquired for other purposes, and I think the committee should keep that in mind. The berm land was not acquired for forest restoration, and gravel extraction is not a suitable activity for the river berms. So that's my point on the river berms. Commercial activities, gravel extraction in the river that is well managed is a win-win for flood protection and for the commercial user and for the region. I have no problem with that. Gravel extraction in the river berms and then backfilled with material is a really bad idea, and I will show you some photos just to back that up. My next point is gravel processing. Crushers. The crushers have been down there for a long time, as long as my lifetime. And I think that's an important source of gravel aggregate for this region. I do have a problem with other commercial ones, one particularly right next door, and it is consented and it is there, so that's life. But I will make comment on the asphalt plant. If the asphalt plant is I better read what I put down. Asphalt plants or plants are not gravel processing. And if asphalt plant is defined as gravel processing, then why not have concrete plants, as they use plenty of aggregate? And I'll just leave it at that. But I find it a conflict that was allowed, and the committee should think about future use, because you do have an asphalt plant there, and you've set a precedent. So, photos. The first one, just things we see. So as I say, I live down there. This is council-controlled stock bank. So this is council-managed stock bank. We'll go to the next photo. Okay, can we go in the back? Can we click through them because I keep going? Yep. So this is lessees controlled stop bank. Part of the lease agreement is that stop banks can't be grazed. I'll just make comment referring to the previous one is not grazed. This is occasionally grazed, which is technically against the lease agreement. I'll let you decide which is the best outcome. Next photo. This is not a picture of my border collie, but it is a picture of a dump truck. So we're now going to gravel extraction on the river berms. So this is the sort of machinery that's used. The next photo. So these guys, when they're full, so just so you know, the topsoil is removed, the gravel was removed, then clay type material is put back and gravel, those big trucks run over it and it compacts the ground very badly. So we go to the next photo. And being contractors, they don't stop when it rains, so they keep working, and then you get pugging. If you know anything about soil structure, it's about the best example of how to destroy it. Next photo. And what happens if you're farmers like us and you then sow it in grass, you'll get ponding like that. And in a day like this, if you want to come for a walk across the paddock, it's a good way to make a bog. Not very good for pasture. And that's my photos. So my key point really about the berms is the plan does state for natural, putting it back into a natural native forest. I think that particular site, the plants just aren't going to grow. They're either going to be very wet in the winter or in summer that ground will dry out. And either way, while it sounds a good idea, I think practically it isn't going to work. That's my submission.
Thank you. That sounds like perfectly 5 minutes. Well done, both of you. Don't think we have any questions. So thank you very much for coming along and the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you. Next one I've got is Peter Burton.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for the karakia. Very appropriate. My name's Peter Burton. I live in River Road across the stop bank from the river. I use the park almost on a daily basis, not on a day like today. And the river is mightily in flood today. But as a walker, as a biker, as a swimmer in summer, as an appreciator of the planting that has gone on almost on a daily basis. And I'm very grateful to have it as my neighbour, to have the river park and the river itself as my neighbour. There's been progress since the 2010 plan. I happened to make a submission 2009. There's been progress, but in my view, not enough in terms of the stated intent of the 15 years that's ensued since then. On wetland development, on tree planting, on a range of things that you can point to, yes, there's progress. But, and there are some big buts, gravel extraction from the berm lands has become far more aggressive in the last 15 years. If you look at what was Chelly's Island, the original extraction area, the following two big ponds that have been created, and you think about the four further sites, the four continuing up the river, that are under the current non-consented resource consent, there is a huge increase in gravel extraction from the berm lands. There's much to be supported in the plan itself, and in particular, I'd point to Part E. What we do, what do we want to achieve, and in particular, the overarching place or given to the concept of te mana o te wai. That framework for freshwater management, I think, is particularly important, and I think it's really important, really good to see it there, and I support that in my submission. And as an aside, I fully support the submission I've been able to read from Ngāti Koata. Excellent submission in my place, which takes the view about the mountains to the sea approach, that you should put the park in the context of everything that happens between the mountains and the Waimea inlet. And we should put the plan within that context. And I think would urge council to take up the offer that they're making to lead a engagement with you in terms of that further management. And I, as a interested citizen, because community is also mentioned in this, and it's the last part of the plan itself, the community engagement in the future planning and implementation, I think, is really good. I acknowledge the commitment to have existing gravel processing to be transitioned out of the park. That's policy 9.2.1, but it doesn't go nearly far enough. And there are 3 points I'd make in my submission. We need a stake in the ground, i.e. dates, to stop gravel extraction except for flood control. Secondly, the stopping of off-road vehicles in the riverbed in particular, and significant trolls on vehicles on the bermlands. If you look at I've got limited time, and my last thing, and I've already said it, I fully support the objective 12.1 that council, iwi, and the community working together in the management of the park. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for that. We got any questions? Okay. All right. Thank you very much for all that.
Thank you.
I've now got Rebecca Hammond, sorry, no E. And we've got some slides as well, apparently.
We have. I've got some photos of the place that we're talking about. Tēnā koutou katoa. I live on River Road, and I am a very keen user of the stock bank and the river. Now, how do I flip through these? Or do I just ask you to? Okay, it's been changed a bit, sorry, from what I thought. Is that the main slide, or is that the notes you've got? So I want the first slide, which is headed Waimea River Park draft plan. So that I don't lose time, I wanted to support the Ngāti Koata plan, the submission, sorry, primarily the vision to this, of the mountain to the sea and the care of the river. I note that the draft plan adopts a lot of the vision, but doesn't reflect this in terms of objectives and actions. The river park plan is being used, in my opinion, as a ruse for gravel extraction, a thinly disguised ruse at that. There needs to be prohibition of we need to prohibit the four-wheel drive vehicles and speedboat access to the river, its banks and its burns. And the TDC needs to walk the talk in terms of caring for the river. And if it does, it will build communities around caring for the river in the same way as has happened with Rabbit Island in particular. I think about how the numbers of the community who actually clear rubbish from the beach and look after the beach, all on a volunteer basis, because you at some point have actually walked the talk and got rid of vehicles driving along that beach. For a while there was a New Year, on New Year's Day, that you were allowed to have motorbikes along there, but you have increasingly looked after the beach yourself, and that's reflected in how the community cares about it, and I believe that could happen to the river. I'm just trying, the PowerPoint isn't actually following what it should, so I'll just carry on as if it was, shall I? No, I sent the whole thing, and I sent a whole lot of photos. I do have a USB with it on. Okay, so you haven't got any of the photos. Well, that's a pity. Perhaps I can send it to the councillors afterwards, because I took some time at going along the eastern bank, and I note that the eastern bank doesn't even figure in the plan that to any great extent. The eastern bank is of the river is just a wasteland of industrial park, and it's totally devoted to the access of 40-tonne trucks, four-wheel drives, and gravel extraction plants. And if you drive along there, and I've got lots of photos on that, on what I sent you, it really is shameful what we've done to the river and how we're using and abusing that river. And you know, you can just drive down to the bank. You can see where the four-wheel trucks are people are using it to exercise pig dogs and dogs. They're using it to drive across the river, through the river, and along the river. And it really is a wasteland. And the river park seems to only address the western side. My other photos on the western side show all of the new planting that is driven across by four-wheel drives. And Peter and I have spent time and picking up those boxes and replanting those plants, and they just drive across it again. My photos also showed how the four-wheel drives have turned the ponds into racetracks, and they race around the ponds, and then they create new tracks. And my photos showed those new tracks, and they create wonderful dirt tracks for four-wheel drives. They have a fantastic time, but they smash all the planting in the process. It also showed photos of the planting that was done many years ago, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, being completely consumed by old man's beard. And there was one particular tree, very sad, it's got a little bit of green on the top, and it's completely consumed by old man's beard. You actually need the community to help you with this, because there's no way the TDC's resources are going to cover the cost of removing all of that weed. But people like myself who use the river will remove those for you, and will continue to look after the new planting. If you remove the four-wheel drives, and if you make it a nice place to go. At the moment, if you try to have a picnic on that river, you've got speedboats racing up and down. Well, how can your kids swim in the river with speedboats? And how can your children enjoy the river if you've got four-wheel drives driving up and down the actual riverbanks where you're trying to picnic with pig dogs or whatever? It's shameful, really, that we reduce the river to the, and that's not to mention the birds. I mean, how does a banded dotterel have a nest when they're smashed to bits by cars, by four-wheel drives or motorbikes or farm bikes driving up and down the riverbanks? They don't stand a chance. I'm sorry you haven't been able to see my slideshow, because there's some very good photos in there, but I do urge you to have a look at those photos. And it's, you know, a picture paints 1,000 words. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you do go, can I just ask that we obviously have an issue with the photographs. Could you resend them to us?
Yes,
please?
I sent them on Google Drive, and sorry, on a Google email, so that you've got full download. There's about 15 photos. I'll resend them, and if you got back to me, if I've also got a USB stick, so you could copy it straight across. Okay. Thank you.
One last thing,
Yes.
personal one for me.
Yes.
And to everybody at the back. We need your voluntary work. we really exist by it. As a community and as a council, we rely a lot on. So thank you for what you're doing, picking up and restanding the guards, plant guards up, and all the other people who do actually help out by picking up the rubbish, whatever. From me, thank you. So keep up the great work.
Well, I'd like to be part of building that community, but it won't happen unless we actually show some dignity to the river. Can I just read this? I know I've had more than my fair share of time, but
5 seconds.
Just picture this, families with young children trying to picnic, relax and swim in the river. There are speedboats racing up and down. There's four-wheel drives driving along the riverbank, quite likely exercising pig dogs alongside, and a constant stream of 40-tonne trucks back and forth along the eastern bank. Plus the gravel plants grinding away, sometimes 7 days a week, although I think their consent says only 6 or 5.5. And this is no place for children or families or birds. So you want that community support, you're going to have to do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're just going to have a 5-10 minute break. Back at 1:40. We're all ready to go again. The next one I've got here is Reese Barrier. Fishing game, yep. So you know all about this. You get 5 minutes.
Yep.
He'll give you a tap on the belt at 4.
Yeah, and you can hear me okay. I've just introduced Tony Entwistle. He's a current pheasant hunter in the Waimea Boomland, so I thought bring him along. If you've got any specific questions at the end, he can probably answer them better than me around pheasant hunting. Right. What I'll do is I'll just briefly go through the main points of our submission, which I think you've got, and then open it to questions at the end. So in general, as we said in our submission, we support the plan. It's pretty well thought out and inclusive, actually. It's a really good effort, we thought. And for our anglers, the river park's been very positive. The Waimea fish out ponds in the last National Angler Survey are now the 4th most popular fishery in the entire Nelson Marlborough region, which is all of Marlborough, all of Nelson, all of Tasman, and some of the West Coast Council's regions. So yeah, very, very popular, particularly for elderly, disabled anglers, etc., and young kids, etc. The river park hasn't been so positive for hunting, as we said. It's probably it is the most popular public pheasant hunting site within the entire Nelson Marlborough region. And over the years, we've probably estimate 60 to 70% of that hunting is now gone just because hunters feel they can no longer safely hunt it. However, what's left is extremely valued by our region's pheasant hunters. And before this meeting, we actually had a catch up with Te Whatu Ora staff who had provided feedback on the plan earlier around safety concerns, and at the end of the meeting agreed that we would submit an agreed policy suggestion within our submission, which they were happy with, and so they haven't needed to submit on this process. So once they talked to Tony and myself and understood the situation, they were more relaxed about it. And yes, we really appreciate Tasman District Council's approach here with hunting. They've let it slowly erode over time as hunters realise it's not safe to do that anymore, because the liability sits with the hunters and New Zealand Police, not the council, and so we appreciate that approach. But we are committed to try and preserve what we can while it's still able to be hunted. So, and then third point in the submission, there's no evidence that we're aware of that throughout New Zealand that indicates game bird hunting in the winter actually disturbs non-hunted game bird species, non-hunted wetland bird species such as bittern, etc. Because there has been a bit of a theme of that through some of the submissions in the plan. And in fact, Fish and Game would argue that hunting can be actually majorly beneficial to wetland bird species. And I have a report here from a bittern survey done in Northland, which I'll give you the 3 commissioners, 4 commissioners, I think it is. And you'll see on the front email there is five wetlands in Northland that were built by Fish and Game or restored through Game Bird Habitat Trust funding, and 3 of those ended up in the top 10 for bittern density in the whole Northern region, and one of them was the top #1 wetland for bittern use. So I don't think there's evidence that suggests hunting is detrimental to bittern, but can you pass that up to those guys, Tony? Yeah, and also as well as things like the Northland survey closer to home, hunters currently predator trap on the entire eastern half of Rabbit Island as part of the Waimea Inlet Forum. So there's a lot of goodwill out there by hunters currently within the Waimea area. And we would like to see that recognised and maintained through this management plan process, because I believe they can contribute even more than they currently are to conservation that we all want, like expanding predator trapping lines, etc. Fish and Game itself in Marlborough has been restoring Para wetland over the last 20 years, and we've estimated we've spent close to, is that time up, is it? Oh, one more minute. We've spent over $1 million on that project if you include staff time over the last 20 years. So I believe hunters can play a big role in conservation going forward. And all we would ask is specifically the Waimea Delta area in future, when council considers it for legal protection, it would be really good to consider that as wildlife management reserve, which I think the Waimea Inlet Forum suggested in their submission as well, rather than nature reserve, because nature reserve basically precludes hunting legally, and it will kick out the last remaining bits of duck hunting that occur down there. So that's about it really. And I've got Tony here if you've got any questions from specifically around pheasant hunting in the Birdlands.
Thank you for that. Is there any questions at all?
We'll take them offline because I know Tony and I know Ken. So I'll ask specific areas later on.
All right. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for your submission. The next one I've got is Ken Wright, and we've got some photos. Okay.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Ken Wright, and I have been sort of hunting in this park for 16 years, hunting pheasants. So it's been of some time. And of course, with time, there's been gradual increases in the use of it. Game hunting generally, specific pheasants. The river park has great cock pheasant populations. We need to maintain the right to hunt these birds. Public safety is up to the hunter. And I constantly check for public activity and will stop and let users pass through and sort of wave to them and indicate that we're waiting for them. Section 8, the dog prohibition areas, we need to be able to use trained dogs to scent and put up cock pheasants. You cannot hunt birds effectively without trained dogs. The dogs also retrieve the birds. It's a wee bit out of sync, but just behind you is an image of a gizzard from one of the pheasants we shot this year, and you can see that it has acorns in it. Invasive species, we need to consider removal of sycamores. This is a very weedy species which spreads. We need to protect oak trees that were planted 60 or more years ago, and I think it might have been involved with Acclimatisation Society. Is that right, Reece?
Yeah.
Yep. These trees provide the acorns which the pheasants will find and feed on. Oak tree sites are an important location to send the dog into flashcock pheasants. They will not be weedy as the pheasants will eat all the acorns. In the area of the Upper Cycle Bridge down to the Waimea confluence, some misguided person, nothing to do with the council or its management, has been killing off some of those trees that were planted 50 or 60 years ago. And there goes an example behind you there, showing that it's quite dead. And then if we flick on to the next one, there's an example of the acorns, or the oak trees and the acorns dropping in the same area. So they have left a few, but they've nobbled a lot in that general area. The rest of the park still has a reasonable cover of oak trees, but it's important we maintain those. Existing dog prohibitions within Pearl Creek and the Pearl Creek Esplanade Reserve. This area has cock pheasants, birds, and the whole area is duck habitat. Once again, trained scenting and retrieving dogs are needed to hunt these birds. If you just flick on to the next image. Or was it at the start? One more? Was there one of a dog? Okay, oh, we're missing one. But this is the image. But I just wanted to show that one of the important things is that the dogs are under control. You can see there's two dogs there with their owner. And the other thing is that we discourage them actively from looking at anything else other than a pheasant. So we don't want them chasing wekas, and we don't want them chasing pukekos. We want them to concentrate on what their task is at hand. Yeah, so that's the important thing, the control over the dogs. So even if we looked at some of those rules, if we could make an exception for game bird hunting dogs, and even if it's a requirement that they're certified trained. But generally, if you're using them, you insist they're not interested in anything else. I made a number of other bits and pieces where there were a few spelling mistakes. But one of the other things that I found was quite interesting and quite important is in the Maori section, there was mention of the use of the area by the tangata whenua from years ago. One of the things I felt was missed out is that the Waimea River source is from the ultramafic zone of geology, and the river contains argillite or pakohi boulders, which were an important source of stone tools. And I just suggested that perhaps the team involved with the plan should check the ecological file keeper and see if there's any working floors have been found in the Waimea River system. I know the Wairoa is a key source coming through which flows into the Waimea River. And I have actually seen the pakohi boulders in the river where the park is. So just if that could be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you very much for coming along. I've got one question. I know we're pushed for time. I'm getting told off over here. The oak trees,
yes.
How are we going to protect them from somebody coming along in the future and poisoning them? Do we protect them, give them a protection guidance over them, or what?
Look, that is one difficulty. I think what happened in the instance where they were poisoned is there'd been a whole lot of native planting done there, and this misguided person thought that they'd make priority of that. But fortunately, there are the areas where they have not been touched, but it's just frustrating the sheer age of them and the production that they're doing to see them nobbled. Yeah, misguided souls.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for coming along.
Yep. Thank you.
The next one I've got is Gillian Pollock. Thanks for coming along, Gillian. know this all too well. We've just got 5 minutes.
Well, thank you for the chance to speak. First of all, sorry, I'd like to take issue over oak trees. They are so weedy, and in that whole area, I have pulled out dozens of oak trees, oak apples that have generated. So before Europeans came along, the whole environment did very well without oak trees. So banish them.
Thank you, Minister.
Every restoration has a purpose to it, and that purpose is to bring back wildlife, bring back our wildlife, birds, lizards, invertebrates, and that should be the supreme consideration. The Waimea River is, if the riparian areas can be increased, then naturally the wildlife will increase, and it must be protected. Trapping, there needs to be organized trapping in the area, and there should be no cars on the river or over the river berm. There needs to be adequate parking outside of the berm, and dogs must be on a lead. We would prefer them not to be there at all, but if they have to be there, then they have to be on a lead. The number of owners with well-trained dogs is in the minority. I've observed owners walking past dog on leash signs, dogs rushing all over the place, owners calling them, no control over them at all. To go to the Waimea Delta, now this is a superb restoration. It's a wonderful opportunity to bring back genuine Delta wildlife. And it holds enormous promise. In that area, there should be no hunting. Birds and dogs do not mix. And there was an interesting experiment done in Australia some years ago, and it showed that when birds were confronted with dogs running free, they all scattered, they just disappeared. When they were confronted with dogs on a leash, they still were highly alarmed. When they were confronted by people, they were mildly alarmed, but nothing compared with the alarm they showed when dogs came along. It would be nice to have a walkway through that area, but just a small one, and arranged in a way that people can't wander off it. So they can wander around, have a look out for bird life, and wander out again, and absolutely no dogs and no hunting in that area. And then it'll be a wonderful success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No questions? Okay. Next one I've got here is David Sissons. Welcome, David. You would know the rules again. 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Let's get myself going. You can hear me. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm speaking on behalf of the Waimea Inlet Forum, their working group, and we've been working for the health and well-being of the inlet since the Waimea Inlet Management Strategy was first adopted by the Council back in 2010. We are now guided by an updated strategy, which you adopted in 2023. One of the greatest opportunities for us to look after and restore the natural values of the inlet is around the mouth of the Waimea River. So my 5 minutes will concentrate on that. I refer you to our full written feedback for more details about this area and our other concerns. But I'll start by saying that we're very impressed by the comprehensive draft of the Waimea River Park Management Plan, and we're very supportive of almost all of it. But now I'd like to concentrate on just a few of the things that we'd like to see improved in the final adopted version of the management plan. The big one is that we were very surprised to see so little forward planning to prepare for the effects of climate change. Climate change is already affecting the park, and Cyclone Fahey and the August 2022 floods have given good forewarning of the sort of effects that are going to get steadily worse from now on. The plan needs to set the groundwork in place for an adaptive approach to, in particular, sea level rise, the resulting rise in groundwater, larger floods, and greater erosion pressures. Fortunately, the 2 new dams will go some way to prepare for increased summer droughts, but the other climate change effects must also be planned for. For instance, the river will become tidal all the way up to the main road bridge at Appleby, and there'll be a greater need for floodway capacity if the stop banks are not to be breached in the larger storms of the future. For the inlet, there's an urgent need to provide large areas for the intertidal salt marsh to migrate into as the high tide level rises, not only for the sake of the river mouth itself, but also in compensation for other areas around the inlet where the fixed infrastructure will prevent the migration of nearby salt marsh, for instance at Wakatu Drive and the airport. In our initial submission, we didn't want the river delta to be included in the river park because it has a much greater ecological significance than the rest of the river corridor, and it deserves a much higher level of protection. However, we do now accept its inclusion in the park, but it does still need to be managed differently from the rest of the park because it is quite different. Different vegetation types, different wildlife, different values, all driven by the fact that it's dominated by the ebb and flow of salt water, while the river upstream is dominated by fresh water, low flows and flood flows, all going one way. And we've been very frustrated by the council's reluctance to acknowledge that you own and therefore should be managing the parts of the delta that you inherited from the Nelson Harbour Board in 1989. We beg you to give these areas and the other council land around them the formal status of a nature reserve, or as Reece just mentioned, we support a wildlife management reserve is probably better than a nature reserve, and to look after them as befits that status. The council ownership has been confirmed several times, including one just recently, and their ecological significance has been identified in various studies, SNH studies and others. We beg you now to acknowledge your responsibilities and start to celebrate and guard this taonga for the sake of the inlet itself and for all of us who unknowingly benefit from its natural values, and for our children stretching into future generations. You've already shown that it can be done through buying the O'Connor's Delta land in 2017 and then doing the amazing restoration work there over the last 5 years. But there is still more to be done. And as we all strive together to implement the Waimea Inlet Management Strategy. So that's enough from me now. Please read carefully through our submission and take notice of it. And thank you again for giving us the chance to say these things. And I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there any questions? No, I think you've done an excellent job. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming along. Next one I've got is Mr. Drew Hayes. Welcome, Drew.
Kia ora, thank you for having me. I've got the privileged position on submitting on behalf of Down in New Zealand, as you know, as a trusted partner to Tasman District and the Tasman Alliance. Gravel processing, storage and staging areas are not just a commercial activity, but they're a critical part of the region's infrastructure supply chain. In particular, for our team, high-value sealing chip and other gravel products that ensures affordable local access for road maintenance activities we undertake. Over the long history of Downer operating from the Waimea Bermlands, there has been considerable contribution in monies for both lease costs as well as royalties from the gravels we've extracted from the river and surrounding areas. The funds directly support ecological restoration, public amenities, and the long-term development of the park. Without this ongoing income, many of the management plan's goals will need to be rates funded. The plan currently proposes two different wordings around transitioning out of gravel processing upon lease renewal. This creates uncertainty for these leaseholders who have invested heavily in infrastructure and environmental compliance, managed operations responsibly for years, contributed financially to the park's development. We do believe that this risks undermining both economic resilience and environmental progress. To put some science behind my statements, if the processing facilities were transitioned out of the park and moved further out of town, chip costs for the reseals that we visited this year together, as well as I presented to you on at the Works and Infrastructure Committee meeting, the chip cost in cartage alone would increase $28,000 for the Richmond area, which is a 45% increase over top, which would have a decrease in the metres squared achieved and obviously council's AMP targets. That's also without the multi-million-dollar relocation of these facilities having to be paid for. That's just one area of work that will be severely impacted that needs these gravel supplies. We're not asking for a free pass, we're asking for certainty. We're asking that the plan be amended to allow existing gravel processing and storage operations to continue with clear criteria-based process for lease renewal, and acknowledge the positive role of the commercial activities in funding the restoration and for public benefit. So in closing, we support the plan's vision, but we urge the panel to ensure that the final version reflects the full picture, one that includes the people and operations that have helped fund and sustain the park, and keep the delivery of road maintenance and project costs down for the ratepayers of Tasman. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. I think I've got a question.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. Good to see you again. The plant that was at the end of Bartlett Road, where now the bitumen plant was, that wasn't a Downham plant?
Yes, it was.
Right.
It was retired a few years ago.
Yeah.
And now for crushing on that site, we do use mobile plants, as well as obviously that's been replaced by an asphalt plant.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that.
Thank you. No other questions? Thanks, Drew, for coming along.
Thank you.
The next one I've got is Malcolm Etheridge.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to present our submission of the draft Waimea River Management Plan. I'm Malcolm Etheridge, Managing Director of Etheridge Crushing and Screening, and we operate the gravel processing site on the boom lands at the end of Blackbriar Road for the last 5 years, and where similar activities have been carried out by Higgins, Oldfields and Gibbons for the last 20 to 30 years before us. We also work in partnership with Fulton Hogan and Downer and TDC to undertake regular gravel extractions from the boom lands and the Waimea River itself. Overall, we're very supportive of the direction of the new plan and the plans and objectives of the river plan, and we want to continue coexisting with TDC and the community users of the park. Throughout our processing and extraction activities, we contribute around $1 million annually via royalties and lease to help support the development of the park and other TDC activities. Our main concerns with the plan is the current draft format is the proposed paragraph that says for existing gravel processing to be transitioned out of the park upon lease renewal, and no new processing areas approved unless downstream environmental risks from the flooding events can be adequately mitigated. This current wording does not provide clarity and certainty that we require for the continued investments in our operations, and alternatives of relocating our processing sites would significantly increase costs to critical aggregates that we produce for the region's infrastructure development. So we're proposing an amendment to the section 9.2.1 and would recommend a revised wording that allows existing processing to continue with environmental safeguards put in place, therefore providing clarity and certainty to the leaseholders, which encourages continued investment in the environmental performance of that area. It would also maintain affordable aggregate supply and lease revenue to TDC for future park development. We believe we're a valued and good tenant now, and we want to coexist with the other users of the river boom. Thanks for your time today and inviting questions if you've got any.
Thank you.
You were mentioning greater mitigation or consideration of environmental impacts of the gravel works. What did you have in mind?
Well, in the plan, it states about the movement of some of our stockpiled areas into the river area, which we believe we've mitigated now. But I think working closely with the council, we can mitigate any of those areas of concerns if they're not already mitigated. But we're also working with the council now to understand what their concerns are. This is the first time that's been brought up that there is concerns of when there's flooding, if there's any environmental effects. The last 20 or 30 years, we have had no issues with flooding and any issues with any of the sites, the particular three processing sites. So we want to work with the council to understand what they might be so we can work through those.
Okay, any more? I've got one. River shingle will eventually run out. So somewhere along the line, we're going to have to look at alternative sources and locations. So at one stage, you have to prepare yourself for moving your operation to another area. So whether that's now or once the resource consents run out, we still will have to allow for that to happen sometime or other. You have to build that into your business program. What do you think about that?
Why do we need to move out from those sites? At the minute, we bring aggregates in, process them, and redirect them. Some of those, yes, we are locally, yes, we are close to the river source, which has a portion of our supply of gravel, but outside the river berms, there is a lot of aggregates that can be extracted safely and environmentally well done, and that can still come to those areas.
Thank you. Understood that now. Thank you very much. I got you. Next one I've got is Bruno Brosnan, Thornton Hogan.
Ina mana, ina reo, I rau rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. I'm here to represent Fulton Hogan, a committed partner in this community and long-term tenant of the Waimea River Boom land for the past 50 years. First and foremost, Fulton Hogan and its Appleby processing plant on the Waimea Boom lands is not the enemy to recreational activities or the environment. We have consistently proven that our activity can coexist with other users, contribute to positive environmental outcomes, and actively deliver on the goals of the Waimea River Park Plan and TDC aspirations. We strongly support the environmental goals of this management plan, but we are equally concerned about the explicit direction within the plan to remove long-established commercial industrial activities from the site, restrict investment into existing plant and facilities, and actively discourage new activities or expansion of existing activities within the area, which we believe could bring about negative consequences. It is essential to understand that our industrial activity can coexist in this location for the long term, benefiting both the community and the environment. Our continued presence can actively enhance environmental stewardship. Fulton Hogan has a history of integrated land use models that promote sustainable practices, and implementation of green technologies that deliver positive environmental outcomes. For instance, our Appleby site, to minimise our footprint, we installed a silk press, which removed the need for large settlement ponds next to the river and reduced our water consumption by enabling us to recycle 90% or 98% of our water. Electrification of our plant, reducing our carbon emissions, and installing the latest processing technology to improve process efficiencies and further reduce emissions. The way we operate should also demonstrate that the industrial activities and environmental preservation can thrive together, ensuring economic and ecological success for the Waimea Park. The economic benefits of having local aggregate processor in this location is substantial. The strategic location of our plant reduces transport costs, which translates into lower costs for local infrastructure projects. This directly benefits council, making projects more economically viable. Without Fulton Hogan's presence in this location, our plant would be located further afield, meaning these projects would face significant cost increases, impacting budgets and impacting ratepayers. Cartage is one of the major costs of producing aggregate. Additionally, ensuring the affordability and availability of aggregate products supports the broader construction industry by supporting the region's future development strategy. Fulton Hogan's occupation of the site provides a steady annual stream of income to the TDC, crucial for managing and maintaining and enhancing the park area. Our financial contributions go beyond lease payments. They include substantial gravel fees from our extraction operations, upgrade of TDC water level monitoring equipment, and establishment rehabilitation of significant environmental habitat. For example, the Challies Wetland Development, which is a $10 million 10-year project. Funds from this project will enable the council to fund essential hazard management, conservation, and recreation initiatives within the park. If we were not in this area, this project would not happen. Our role extends further as we frequently undertake works at no cost to council, whether it's maintaining riverbanks, planting native species, cleaning up rubbish, policing riverbank behaviour, or constructing and maintaining recreational infrastructure. Our contributions are vital and at no charge to council. These efforts not only enhance the park, but also reduce the council's operational costs, allowing more resources to be directed towards other community projects. Our involvement in Challies Wetland Development is a prime example of our commitment. We are developing a series of large wetlands with significant native plantings and recreational infrastructure at our own expense, contributing significantly to local biodiversity and habitat restoration within the park area. This project will transform other formal pastoral land into a thriving ecological zone, demonstrating our dedication to environmental goals, specifically those articulated in the current and draft plan. This initiative demonstrates our ability to deliver sustainable environmental outcomes while continuing industrial activities without detrimental impacts or risks. Our concern is that the current policies do not provide certainty or provide a clear pathway for industries to remain in the park. Uncertainty inhibits business investment and hinders decisions. This could result in businesses like Fulton Hogan receiving investment, reducing investment and improving operations like what I mentioned earlier. To improve this, we recommend the plant should clearer about the criteria for businesses to stay in the park. We firmly believe that the draft policies need to be reworded to reflect and provide for continued existence of industrial activities that have a functional need to be within the park area. We also urge the council to provide certainty and specific criteria on what characteristics are expected or required for continued occupation, and remove the restated restrictions on investment to existing activities in this location for environmental and compliance reasons. It's crucial for councillors and council to recognise the pivotal role commercial derived fees play in the maintenance and enhancement of the park. By allowing responsible industrial activities to continue, the council can achieve community and recreational environmental objectives while avoiding escalation of development costs that would strain council budgets and impact ratepayers. If industrial activities are excluded, the desired outcomes of the draft plan will not materialise.
Thank you. Well done. Right on time. Don't think we've got any time for questions. No. So thank you very much for coming along. Okay, the next one I've got here is Belinda Crisp. You've got 5 minutes. If I could just ask you to reach over to your left-hand side and turn that microphone off, it would help. And Flight Deck will tell you after 4 minutes with the thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou, ko Belinda toko Noah from the Nelson Tasman Cycle Trails Trust. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. First of all, I'd like to thank you for all the work done on the management plan. It is a very difficult area with lots of different interests and an increasing population that wants to use this space. So it's a tricky proposition which the plan acknowledges. My submission emphasises this point about the increasing population and different needs, but I do appreciate that this is only a small picture of the bigger things that you are considering. The Great Taste Trail is well known as a safe area for recreation and a great place for locals to utilise. The preference is for everyone to use it and share it respectfully with other users as they enjoy the Waimea River Park. If a way could be found to do this, it would be preferable. However, as we know, the idea of enjoying a space is different for different people. For a walker or bike rider, it is the quiet and the calm. For an off-road motorbiker, it is often speed and skids. Unfortunately, when these two users share the same space, one group has to forego their enjoyment if the other is to have theirs. So it is my submission that in my submission, I suggest a compromise when looking specifically at the gravel section of Bryant Road in Brightwater. As noted in my submission, the plan states, in certain locations, such as Tasman's Great Taste Trail of Bryant Road, the growing number of walkers and cyclists makes vehicle access increasingly unsuitable, especially since the swimming holes being accessed are within easy walking distance of vehicle parking locations for most visitors. In addition, Policy 8.71 notes that recreational motorised vehicles will be actively discouraged from Tasman's Great Taste Trail. So the compromise is this. Keep Bryant Road open for approximately 430 metres along the river to allow vehicles to drive to the river access point and swimming holes. You can see this on the map that is up on the screen there. From this point, a barrier should be installed so that only walkers and non-motorised cyclists can continue through to the Brightwater Bridge. This is a position strongly supported by Senior Constable Matt Berquist from the Wakefield Police, who has received complaints in regards to dirt bikes, quad bikes and utes using the Great Taste Trail. He is happy to be contacted to discuss the complaints. His details are in the additional information which I've submitted. Another solution is to designate Bryant Road as a cycle lane, or in this case, a shared pathway under the traffic control devices bylaw. Once this is done, then the land transport rule applies and the bylaw can be enforced by the police, excluding motor vehicles from this section. I would suggest though that this is a rather blunt tool with no compromise and unlikely a happy thing to police. It relies on people to reading signs and following them, which unfortunately does not always work. One final point to note, when the Great Taste Trail was being formed in this area, the gate was closed at the entry to the river section. It was constantly vandalised, and after the trust had spent over $500 on new padlocks, it left it open. So the intention, however, was to have this section of Bryant Road vehicle free, and the trust is paid to maintain that section as a cycle trail. With vehicles on it, it makes it pretty tricky. So we submit that it's time for this section again to be vehicle free. That's all I have, and welcome any questions.
Thank you for that. Is there any questions? Thank you very much for coming along. Doesn't appear to be any questions.
No problem. I've been out in the river park today. It is very wet and flooded.
And the last one I've got here, Mr. Neil Deans. Welcome, Mr. Deans. You have 10 minutes.
Kia ora. Kia ora tātou. Ko Neil Deans, tōku ingoa. Many of you probably know me. I've been in front of the council talking about issues such as the Waimea for 35 years, and it's nice to be back. I'm here representing the Ngāti Koata Trust, one of the 8 Te Tau Ihu iwi that have an interest, statutory acknowledgement in respect to the Waimea River. And that's unique actually anywhere in the top of the south. So iwi have a strong interest in this area, and I want to acknowledge that I think the council has generally done a great job in trying to manage the multiple interests in this area, and make the initial comment that as well as its statutory acknowledgement, this is unique in Tasman District in the sense it's a large area in the lowland plains that's managed directly by the council and provides a great range of different public interest elements to it, which I dare say makes management challenging. I think the location close to the major, I guess, urban areas in the district and also Nelson enables opportunities that would not otherwise be available to people based in the city and Richmond. It's also important to try and understand how it can be an exemplar of how areas should be managed in the lowland to provide for those multiple interests, and also set, I guess, a good example for adjacent land users and other people wishing to use the river or its margins. Obviously, from an iwi perspective, it's important that the area be managed in a holistic way. One of the challenges for council, it has multiple purposes and tasks, and it has to somehow integrate them in this place. And I think the management over an extended period has generally tried to reflect that. It's not always succeeded, but I think I applaud you for trying to do that. And note that, of course, it was originally Soil Conservation Rivers Control Reserve. I gather it's now fee simple held by the council. I do wonder whether that's an appropriate status and suggest in the submission that consideration be given to its having some kind of reserve status that might acknowledge the multiple interests. Now, I realise that's not a straightforward exercise. However, I think under the circumstances, it may still be a more appropriate approach, and it would have to be one that enabled the variety of uses and potential future uses that might be the best thing to do for that area, whilst acknowledging and providing for things such as flood management and aggregate management. But let's not lose sight of the other things, such as water quality and quantity. As Councillor Mailing knows well, I've been involved in issues to do with water quantity in the Waimea for a long time, and applaud the actions of the council in the last decade or more to deliver for that. It's important that, for example, access for people to undertake activities in the river like swimming, fishing, and other things are able to be sustained. Sediment management, including aggregate, is a key part of this. Unlike, for example, in Marlborough, where there's too much sediment, they don't know what to do with it. There's the opposite problem here. There really isn't enough. It's very convenient that it's local and close to the major urban areas of this area, but it poses challenges. I don't have an observation to make about the ongoing desire for the companies to continue to process gravels there. I think they have done so as responsibly as they can, and certainly have tried their utmost to manage those areas in a way that's compatible with other interests. And I applaud them for that. You did ask a good question, Mr. Chairman, regarding the future. And I think one of the challenges here is how much sediment will there be in the future and how is it best to manage that. But that's perhaps a slightly separate conversation than that today. Obviously, it's also utilised for riparian management, restoration, and ecological purposes, many of which are being done very well. So I applaud the council for that and the community that's contributing to that, with funding, as has been noted, from other directions. And of course, the establishment of wetlands and fish out ponds and so on is part of that. Obviously, from an iwi perspective, the area is extremely important because of the cultural sites. And it is an area that was extensively utilised by iwi and prior to European arrival. And it's important that that be acknowledged and somehow better provided for. And I don't think there's enough on that in the plan, and I think it would be a good conversation to be having with iwi as to work out how to appropriately undertake that. Recreational uses which are compatible with that area should be acknowledged, and many of them I think that have been undertaken for a long time are quite compatible. Some of them on a limited basis or a limited space or time, but they can still occur and are important to people that undertake that recreation on the basis that it doesn't, as we've heard, derogate from other opportunities that may exist. And I guess the commercial uses and resource extraction, I think, is an important issue. I mentioned earlier about land status should better reflect the multiple interests. And the other issue, I think, regarding, particularly from an iwi perspective, regarding the utilisation of the resource and where that money goes, I think is an important point. If it's seen to go, and I think it does, but it would be nicer to have this a bit more transparent, that the royalties and the lease leases that are made of the area go back into managing the area. That should be made explicit, and I think that would be a good way of showing the wider benefit of those commercial uses, particularly when they are doing so to conform to the broader plan objectives. And I think the other issue that's been touched on is that I've always in the past looked at the area and thought it doesn't quite work in some areas, and some places probably wider than it needs to be, and this is historical legacy, and other areas there are bits missing that should be part of that. So, and I think we've just had a recent debate about some land in the lower part of the true right of the delta, which is privately held, where I think there are still some ongoing issues about proposals in that area that could be better integrated if the council had a more active program to support more sustainable land use in those areas. Happy to elaborate on that, but other than that, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Happy to answer questions, and I applaud the council for carrying on this good work.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Neil. Any questions? I'll just clarify one thing when I think I've got the right people beside me here. You're talking about income coming from gravel extraction. It's my understanding that it's a closed account, and there's only any funds coming from that are used on or within the Waimea River Park. Is that, am I wrong on that? Right on that? Don't know.
Okay.
Okay, we'll leave that then. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, look,
okay, yeah, go for
Kia
it.
ora, through the chair. So at the moment, river income, the primary use of gravel fees is to support the sustainable management of the wider gravel resource across the region. Within the river park, the fees that are recovered from the consents within the river park, in this case it's Challies, are used back within the river park. So that one is a closed account, it's ring fenced. The income that comes from the berms at the moment is largely used within the park, but one of the proposals coming forward is around the ring fenced use of income to stay within the park, the other income. At the moment, I could safely say the bulk of the income stays within the park. I'm just looking at David for a nod. Yeah. He's wobbling.
Okay, so obviously we can't answer that today.
Yeah, look, I'm not asking for a specific answer on that, but I think it's a worthy consideration. And as I mentioned, if it can be shown the extent to which, for example, the aggregate industry is contributing to the park management, I think that's really, really helpful for their, and I know they're doing good stuff, but it's really good to be able to say, actually, as was mentioned by one of the submitters, Challies Island wetland is a $10 million project over 10 years. That's a big contribution that ratepayers are not having to sustain. The other issue, which I should really be clear about, is that from an iwi perspective, these resources, the river itself and its management, because it has changed quite dramatically because of sediment removal over the last 50, 60, 70 years. It is important to understand that it fits in a holistic sense. We don't want to find that we've got problems arising with the river because of the extraction, which comes to your question, Mr. Chairman. And so we really need to understand the nature of and the dynamics of that. And it would be good to know that we have got a sustainable utilisation of that resource, and it's not creating problems potentially in the future for flooding. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've just got one comment, and it's a personal one here. I would like to see closer partnership with council and iwi, and not just in kind, but also maybe supporting and promoting areas together, sharing things together, as opposed to so much seems to be lumped by the community on the council to do things, where if the iwi and the council could work in partnership and promote it as a partnership, I'd certainly feel a lot happier that we're working together. So that's just my own personal opinion.
Well, that's a very admirable sentiment, and you know, we need to find ways to work together effectively. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I haven't got any more green names here. Either of you. Okay, so that's the end of our hearings today. I'd like to close it with the karakia, please, Ursula.
Oh, kia ora, just through the chair, it would be good to get a breakdown back to the other conversation of the allocation of funds and what the amounts are and where they go. David? Is that all right?
Absolutely, yeah,
So
I
we
don't mind
have a better
talking
understanding.
about that. Yeah.
And also, yeah, thank you.
Thank you everyone for your attendance.